Because I feel like we both like bared our teeth at the same time. So it's super like, what?
Warm up.
Waruma apu.
Oh boy. That was a failed attempt to do groceries today.
We did not calculate correctly.
But yeah, we are warming up and we will start in a very few minutes.
So we're just doing the social share stuff as usual. Gotta self-promote. Gotta push for reach.
Okay, YouTube monitor is running. Hey, Andre. No, we weren't able to grocery. As it turns out, SM Aura closes the grocery at 8 o'clock.
So, yeah, before it was like 9:39.
Yeah, so by the time we got there, they were telling us there won't be enough time. So, yeah.
Alas. Okay, sharing. And as much as like, you know, it makes sense. I understand why mall hours have changed. It's just that I didn't think about it beforehand. And it was funny because our biggest concern was actually we wanted to avoid eating at the mall because as of late when we do grocery, we have a quick bite at the food court as long as there aren't any people, because then we notice that there aren't many people in the food court. The food court beside the supermarket, not the one upstairs. And so we would normally have dinner. And then this week I'm like, we can't eat at the mall anymore. So we had leftovers for dinner early, thinking it would have enough time to grocery. But no.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We're gonna have to rethink how we're gonna do this. I don't want to go grocery on the weekend, but we may have to grocery on the weekend because no choice. Or we do delivery, but then when we do delivery, the veggies are horrible. Yeah. Horrible or incomplete.
Well, that's life.
Yes, it is.
But I guess we can start because we have a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah.
And this is a huge stuff.
What are you trying to say? What is this emphasis on side?
Because okay, we'll have to cover it as part of the show. This is Tobie.
And this is Rocky.
And if it's your first time here, welcome to Baduy Pride, a little space on the internet where we talk about anything we want.
This is completely unscripted and not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Join us. We talk about everything and anything random live.
And if it's not your first time here, thank you so much for joining us again. So our episode tonight for the 163rd episode is all about Battlestar Galactica, a topic which was requested by
Karen.
And we realized to talk about this, we have to talk about a lot. Because it's not just the show that most know about, but there's the mini-series before the show.
I treat it all as one.
There's the series and movie before the show. There's the series that came after the show, whether it's the web series and the spin-offs.
The web series was during the show.
Well, yeah, that's true.
And then there was a movie in the middle of the show.
And there were multiple web series.
That is true.
And then beyond that, there's the toys, there's the board games, there's the video games, there's the role-playing game. So it's a lot of ground to cover.
Oh, excuse me. I'm already tired. Okay, so so we're gonna talk about Battlestar Galactica. Now, it's funny when and I guess the main point of perspective is the reimagined sci-fi series. I think that's like the center of the discussion. As much as there was an original show before it, I think our realistic perspective is focused on this one. And that's what I wanted to kind of touch on. Like when people first started talking about that there is a new Battlestar Galactica, it just felt really like, what? I mean, I once
that's from way back.
Yeah, I once the one time we went to Universal Studios when I was a kid, I was able to go to the original Battlestar Galactica ride. Well, it wasn't a ride in itself. It was a part of the studio tour.
Yeah.
And it was actually a combination animatronic, light, sounds, and stunt show.
So I think it was a 4D show sort of thing.
No, so what happens is that you're in the trailer, and then your trailer gets captured by the Cylons, and that's this guy with a tank outside. And then you go into the ship, and then like the heroes appear. I can't remember if it's Starbuck or whatever, but appears and starts fighting the Cylons across you. And I was very young, so I was quite terrified. But I would peek, and I was fascinated by the Cylons being all shiny and silver, and that was it.
And how they break perfectly in half when they're shot.
Oh, that was the big leader. It was like splits open.
You get shot.
But yeah, so it was a stop on the tram, and then once you're liberated, you continue on while the fight finishes up, and then that was it. That was the moment, and that was like my main exposure to the original Battlestar Galactica TV show.
And yes, so say we all was a statement that the show was it present in the original? I can't remember.
I don't know because I barely watched the original, and I tell myself I'll get around to it, but I never.
I have vague memories of the original, but then I'm not sure if it's the original I remember or supposedly the Galactica 1980, which was a restart of the series prior to the reimagination we all know that supposedly was also there. Because it did recycle footage as well from the original. So I always have that, I wonder which one I remember, and I don't know for sure.
And the original was really like an effort to bring like the action adventure of Star Wars type stuff to the small screen. I mean, that's ultimately what it tried to achieve.
And there were a lot of inspirations drawn from Mormon doctrine and would theology be the right word? In the sense of the concepts of...
There's always been strong religious undertones.
Yeah, I guess that's the best way to say it.
So it was so striking when the Reimagined series was announced. And it's like, and just that term, and that's when people were like bandying about that. Is it a reboot? Is it a reimagination? Is it whatever? And then they kept...
I did bring it out, the miniseries.
I don't think we have a disc of it. I forget if it's part of our season 1.
But I remember there was a separate miniseries disc. It's probably still here.
Or you're thinking the DVD. Because to be fair, okay, what's going on is that we have a Blu-ray set on top, but we have some of the DVD sets that we got individually.
Yeah, this is already season 1. I remember we have a miniseries.
The Blu-ray or DVD?
I think DVD.
Because then this one's just the DVD of seasons 2 and 3.
2.5 and 3, actually.
Yeah, because 2.5 includes... what does this include? And it's extended Pegasus. Okay. We've purchased and repurchased this a few times.
It was our attempt to support the show.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I can't look deep in. I don't want to look deep in.
Yeah. So I think that was one of the most striking things about it initially was the fact that it was. I mean, we couldn't quite decide what to call it. It was a reimagination. Everybody was used to a reboot, right? That reboots happen, but this one didn't want to be a full reboot. They claimed it was a reimagination. It implied it was still connected to the original Battlestar, but not fully. It wasn't super tied to it. And it's still centered around a ship called the Battlestar Galactica. And a lot of the characters share the same names of characters from the original series, but with very different characterizations.
So I guess we might as well start with what is Battlestar Galactica? As a brief thing for those who might be viewing and are not familiar with the show. I know Somnus earlier mentioned when I was asking if he was watching in the episode. I'm not sure if he's here now. He doesn't know the show. His father does.
Ooh.
And I was like, well, you're still welcome to join us. So, what is Battlestar Galactica? If you were to summarize it as briefly as possible.
Awesome. In terms of the rebooted, reimagined, whatever series, however you want to call it, but the
premise of the show is
okay. You can go in that direction. Sure.
Yeah, it's a human civilization that's similar to ours from a distant part in the universe, who then are dealing with, I guess you could say, the return of an old enemy.
Okay, that's fair. And these being the Cylons. And the Cylons is the classic, like, you built robots, the robots rebel, the robots move away. So that's sort of like that narrative. And these are the Cylons. But the thing that kicks off the entire series is the fact that when the Cylons do reappear, they reveal that they now appear as human, that they have human bodies. And suddenly you no longer know who the Cylons are because they may be Cylons everywhere.
Yes.
And their first, upon their return, their attack on the 12 colonies, which is like human civilization as we know it, is devastating. And we're left with a ragtag fleet of mostly civilian ships and the Battlestar Galactica trying to survive.
Because they, in many aspects, are the last remnants of the human race.
Yes. So, and that's how things kick off. And it's a super striking way to start a story. When we first watched the miniseries, and we weren't together at the time, but we watched it separately. But when I first watched the miniseries, it was like, oh my God, this is amazing. It was such a refreshing take on things. And then more importantly, it was a mostly serialized show in the sense that you must watch every episode in sequence. Every plot point continues one from the other, which is different from like classic Star Trek, which I love. But for the longest time, Star Trek and many other TV shows were built for syndication, which means that since you cannot guarantee when people are going to watch it, each episode must stand on its own. And therefore, you always have the status quo, the big conflict, and things happen. But by the end of the episode, you go back to status quo. And that is how I tend to term as episodic.
I realized, don't we have a book also?
Somewhere, we have some books, yes.
Yeah, it would have been nice to hold it. But for those asking, the miniseries came out in 2003. It's a 3-hour miniseries. And to be honest, you can start with the miniseries. It's the best way to start. And if you don't like it, then that's fine. But the miniseries itself captures already what to expect with the show, because it's got drama, it's got suspense, it has just enough sci-fi
and sexy robots.
Just enough. Yes, that's true. Sexy robots.
And the miniseries is what many would term to be a backdoor pilot. Like, depending on the reception of the miniseries, it kind of helped determine if they're really going to move forward with the rest of it.
Now, the beauty of the miniseries is it still very beautifully captures introducing the different characters that will be present in the show. And at the same time, tell a great story. Not like certain 4-hour movies that struggle to do the same with just 6 characters or 7. But for a 3-hour miniseries, it was amazingly done.
It's actually because it was presented in 2 parts.
Yeah.
2 parts.
And, despite that, each character has enough of a personality that you'll know if you like or hate them.
Yes.
Each character, already that early, you're not sure if you want them to die. You're that attached that quickly.
But they weren't also 2 stereotypes. Like, it wasn't like super good knightly characters and super mustache twirling evil characters. Mitch was briefly asking, can you kwento the 12 planets? I don't think you don't need to get into the specifics of them. The only reason why they were 12 is because they were named after the zodiac.
Yeah, so you have Caprica, you have Sagaton, you had
so it's all
Pycon.
They were all based on Western zodiac.
Pycon, Pisces, Capricorn, of course.
Caprica is
Capricorn.
Yeah, this is 12 of them. So that's why it was the 12 colonies, because they were the zodiac colonies. And so what became sort of the core of the show is really that we have Admiral Adama. Nope, that didn't help. Actually, it's better at an angle because it's too reflective. So
yeah, but I wanted to show him better.
Okay. So Admiral Adama is the leader, is in charge of the Battlestar Galactica. If anything, he was actually like on his way out.
Oh, there you go.
And the Battlestar Galactica starts the show as a museum ship, a relic of the first Cylon War, and was already like on its way out for full decommissioning.
Yes.
And then you have his second in command, that's Colonel Tai, and we had Laura Roslin, who becomes the political representative of the colonies.
Given the massive death and destruction of the human race from the attack, she becomes the one in line to replace the president, despite not really being someone who has political ambitions in that direction.
Yeah, then we meet. Oh, this doesn't help. Let's not talk about him because he's later. But then you have Starbuck, who was a gender swapped character from the original, but in both cases is the hotshot pilot. It's like the very short thing. You have Apollo, who is actually Lee Adama, who is the admiral's son,
and has issues,
among many things. Like
he is the character you will hate because he always has issues. Him we shall reserve for those who watch the show. But then you have, of course, we'll start here.
Well, this is Boomer. I will just say this is Boomer. And she is a different kind of pilot. She pilots something that we call the Raptor, so it's more of a support pilot. And it's not fast flying, but more like I scan and stuff.
Boomer has a relationship or grows into a relationship with
no one on this cover.
That's fine.
Okay, but don't point to things. But yeah, she has Boomer has a relationship with the chief,
and that
who does repairs.
Is one of the other.
It's like the initial drama, like ooh. Yeah. It's like inter-office romance. Okay. Then you have Hilo.
Yeah.
Yes, right, Hilo, and then he is Boomer's co-pilot in the Raptor initially. You have the woman we end up calling Caprica 6, and there are reasons for this, and you'll find out why. But she is in the beginning the face of the Cylons. It's like the very first Cylon we encounter is her in human form. And then lastly we have Dr. Baltar, who is the guy everybody hates. No, but he is sort of a scientist.
Think of him as the Lex Luthor in the story,
but like slimier and not as smart.
And he has the damnedest luck to get away with everything, which makes him in many ways one of the two you could say antagonists in the show, because you will always feel like they're the ones who are causing trouble for everyone else.
Like if I were to compare it to like Lost in Space, he's Dr. Smith, but then like the Dr. Smith from the original Lost in Space, and not the cool Parker Posey Dr. Smith. So yeah.
And a coward, Mitch shares,
Karen says charismatic, and that's true. It's so weird, no? Because like, why do people get into Baltar? He always looks dirty.
So with that ensemble of characters
and others, and
this
so
is
many
like
others,
the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of other characters that are later introduced. Many of them, their identities will be in question. Many of them, their roles will evolve in time. Someone might start out as just an assistant, and later in the end of the series is now in charge. And it's amazing seeing these stories develop as you go through the many seasons of the show.
Yes, and because it's such a limited community on the ships, then you really will see people progress, grow up, and throwaway elements introduced early on become more important. You have people who learn to become pilots, and by the end are the ace pilots. Things like that, and it's quite cool.
Now, while the show does have the trappings of a science fiction series,
it is a science fiction.
The show does not focus on itself being a science fiction series. There are only a few episodes wherein it's really talking about the science of this and that.
So you're saying like low on techno babble.
Yes, and
it's not Star Trek.
There's a lot more stories about the human element, about the drama of being the last survivors of the human race, about making very difficult decisions, about not knowing who you can trust, and the like.
And toasters everywhere. And this one has a signature of Ron Moore. Not that I met him, I bought this with the signature. So yay. Things like that. So so what stands out beyond the fact that it was the first like big reimagining? Because after this we started to see a bunch of other reimagined concepts, which was just a way to, more of them were closer to reboots in that classic movie sense of, oh, it's another version of the Ghostbusters and all these things. But it also heralded a strong return or clamor for the serialized story.
Mm-hmm.
So the things that we've come to celebrate now, whether it's the likes of Breaking Bad, The Wire, or even Game of Thrones, I feel all have a lot to thank Battlestar Galactica for, because it boldly proclaimed that no, we can totally handle serialized storytelling, and more importantly, serialized storytelling of what's a more niche genre. So yes, we can do a tighter story. So then even now the new Star Treks have a more coherent like story that goes from episode to episode. So Discovery is mapped out that way, that you have generally one large meta plot and such. Which is like, I like how they link mythology to the story. I mean, again, because that's their religious angle, which is tribute to the nature of the show in the original series, and then really was explored in this reimagined series. And it's kind of bonkers because there are times that it feels like you're in the middle of a philosophical debate, or maybe even some sort of theology class, as people discuss right and wrong and prophecy and belief and faith, and it's quite heavy. It's quite heavy.
So the show goes through 4 seasons, but in addition to the miniseries before it, the 4 seasons, you have, of course, the optional extras, which are the webisodes. Many of them were created during the writer's strike.
Yes.
And then you have the movies. Officially, that's Razor and... sorry, was that Razor? The one with the Pegasus?
Mm-hmm.
And The Plan. Although The Plan was more the DVD extra movie, so to speak.
It was a clip show and was like presenting that that they have a plan, because it's in the intro of the show that the Cylons, when they finally come back, and then there are Cylons among us, and then they have a plan.
So there were actually 2 sets of webisodes.
Yes.
So there was the webisodes during season 3, which filled in some of the events between season 2 and 3.
Yes.
And then there were the webisodes that were released between episodes 10 and 11 of season 4.
Yeah, in the middle.
And then in addition, there are also webisodes leading to the release of Razor.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a lot of material. If you think about it, it's almost like they had a season 5 and they just didn't officially call it that.
And then scarily, if you skip the miniseries or you deal with like things like this complete box set of the Blu-ray doesn't clearly include the miniseries. I'm not sure if we will find it on a separate. We haven't fully explored it. We if it's like part of the season 1 material or things like that. But the way that the official series begins, which is the episode 33, is that the title of the episode, is an amazing...
Oh, the first episode of season 1. Yes.
Yeah, is an amazing kickoff to things. That the very first episode of the official series, 33, basic premise, the Cylons keep finding the fleet, and then their main defense against the Cylons is to jump away. And in theory, you can't track people once they jump. It's like Star Wars, where you can't super accurately track people once they've jumped into hyperspace. But in this case, they can. And worse, the Cylons keep appearing 33 minutes after the last jump.
And part of that episode is them wondering why 33, why not sooner, why not faster, why is it always specifically that amount of time? And you could see how tired they are. You could see how their spirits are tested, and it's a very powerful opening to a series. Even if you haven't seen the miniseries, you immediately get, okay, the story is about people who are desperate to escape this relentless robotic force.
And then and that number 33. I mean, I feel like it was a decision to put it into a time frame that we can generally understand on like a human level. Like it's not even as long as the show, because the show was a 1-hour show with commercials in terms of format. But so it was that really like, oh my god, 33 minutes. 33 minutes really blitzes by quicker than you think, and for people to be constantly on the run, to be in a state of constant military readiness, it just made for such a striking start to the show. And it really kind of from the very beginning said, we're telling a different kind of story. It's not hopeful. There's no magical scientist that's going to fix things. We have the human race on the run. So yeah. Another thing that always struck me, which was something that was established at the end of the miniseries and carried throughout the seasons, was the humanity count, where they counted how many people survived, and then at the beginning of every episode, in the title sequence, they would update how many survivors are left. And this is not like Voyager's magical disappearing, reappearing shuttles or torpedoes. This was a constant number that would drop from episode to episode. And they maintained that continuity, that people would just slowly die out. It was humanity losing a war of attrition. And that was such a crazy narrative device, the population.
And then what else? Of course, again, we're now in this, so many things to talk about, but you don't want to spoil it for anyone who might be watching it for the first time. Or
Mitch cites, and just there are fun things that we can talk about. So Mitch cites that it did introduce the word frack.
Yes.
Which is a word, right? No, not quite. It was flack pala. But obviously it was used as a swear word.
Fracking does exist, but it's something you do
digging. But it's
it has nothing connected to the way they used it in the show, which was their way to have cuss words and expressions
without censorship.
Yes.
Because they all use the F word, but it was the frack word.
I also liked how their intro was always a sneak peek of what was to come.
Previously on Battlestar Galactica.
And, even the portion just before the intro ends, wherein you have the drums and it's like cut all these little snippets of what's happening.
The title sequence always included quick clips of the episode itself.
And there was that
to the very powerful pounding of the drums.
So you wouldn't want to skip the intro. Because when you see that part, you're like, you saw, baka naman, they're going to talk about this episode.
Yeah.
And it was such a powerful system. I don't know if they were the first to do that, though. I don't remember if shows like Heroes or Lost did something similar.
Because that's a lot of extra work for your prod. Because normally, the title sequence is filler already. It's like, it's already set. You just change the cast and guest stars for the episode. But, you just leave that running automatically and not add post-production work to it. But BSG, every title sequence included a preview of the episode, and it was edited to the climax of the theme music, which had heavy use of drums to great effect, I feel. To build tension, to signal action. And that's like another part of this thing that was like always super memorable, that the scoring was amazing. Even just, and the opening title, it actually starts mournful and quiet because it's the choral chanting thing that's slow, and then it builds up with the drums. But normally you want to like start big and like, hey, here's the show. But no, it's like it starts kind of like we're lamenting the fact that humanity's on the run, and then we kind of get into what's going to happen today.
If I remember, the opening song was a prayer.
Ah, really?
And then they mix in the drum beats afterwards. I'm trying to find now the mention of that one.
Maybe it's an IMDb thing. Then also must make sure you're looking at the reimagined show specifically and not just Battlestar Galactica, the entire franchise. So yeah, and across the show only has 4 seasons, but there's actually so much material. We actually rewatched Battlestar Galactica on Prime Video, on Amazon Prime Video, recently as sort of feel good fare, which is weird to say that this is feel good fare in the middle of a pandemic, but it's just comforting because it's just very good storytelling, and I don't mind watching it again. And it's like watching the whole thing again was like, oh my god, there are so many good bits.
So the song, the vocals are of a famous Hindu mantra, which is taken from the Rig Veda, which is So it's the words which translate to approximately, may we attain that excellent glory of Savitar the god, so he may stimulate our prayers. So it's that mantra. And then it goes to the drum beats, which was not present because in the first season of the US season, the opening theme was just instrumental. But then for the broadcast in other countries, that's when they started to add the vocals.
Interesting.
And then after the first season, the US broadcast started to use the same one as well.
And what the frack oddly entered entered the lexicon, and then more importantly, as the show built up, especially towards season 3, season 4, they would do these videos like they were what the frack recaps, so that you could figure out what the hell was going on. And they were just primers that were like put on YouTube right before the season was going to begin, and oh my god, it's always exciting.
So what else? The show does not have aliens. There are no weird.
That's true.
There are no weird creatures. There's no weird humanoids other than the Cylons and the humans. The show is focused on that. Maybe at most there might be some animals, but not really alien animals either.
No dogs dressed up as aliens. No people dressed up as dog aliens. None of that. So it's about humanity and dealing with their creations. And it just so happens that these creations are now appearing to be human. And that in itself was a great kickoff for sort of the overall tension of the show. That conflict. That it added that espionage element. When who do you trust? And because there are literally sleeper agents and spies in the fleet, and then you don't know who they are. And by the end of the miniseries, you'll already know some of them who are embedded in the fleet and wonder how that's going to affect things.
So some other trivia in IMDb list, the "So say we all" phrase was supposedly ad-libbed by Edward James Olmos in the speech given by Commander Adama in the miniseries.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if that's true, but if it is, that's amazing.
That's awesome because it carried across and it became sort of their amen.
And then supposedly he had a clause in his contract that there should be no aliens.
Oh,
that way the show should be human focused.
That's interesting. That's very interesting.
Hot Dog is played by Baduy Olmos, his real life son.
I didn't realize that. Okay, good job, Hot Dog.
He was brought in the first season for a bit part as Nugget and ended up becoming a recurring character. Richard Hatch, who was Tom Zarek in the show, was originally Apollo in the original series.
Yeah.
And then paper and all books and the like have their corners cut off because this is supposedly a reference that they had to cut corners financially in a lot of the limited budget problems they had.
I didn't get that. I just felt like, are they obsessed with octagonal things? It's like, it felt like more work to have octagon shaped paper. It's paper without corners, but okay, sure. That's cool.
I'm checking if there's any other key things that are not necessarily too spoily.
From a Battlestar Galactica, like in the show, definitely watch the miniseries. Definitely watch the main series. If you can, watch the webisodes, because the webisodes were, especially the first wave of webisodes, were a creative effort for them to continue to create content, but not be able to release it on TV because of that writer's strike of, what was that, 2007? Which forbid the writers from working because it was a union strike.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of TV shows kind of went weird. And then that's why even Heroes had webisodes at this time, because there was that gray area of, it's YouTube, so it's not like, really writing for TV. So there is that. And then the Razor movie is great. At least it feels like it just nicely fits into what was going on with the rest of the series. And then I kind of stopped there. So there was the plan at the end.
I think the plan was the most disappointing thing to come out from the reimagination.
Because of the spin-offs.
Because we all expected it to be something great.
That they really had this big plan.
Instead, it felt like a clip show.
Yeah, it was a clip show with some additional film
and then
moments.
The big reveal moment
didn't feel like it was a plan.
Yeah, because it was like, okay, so that was it, but we kind of know that already, so it didn't really have that much impact.
Yeah.
Some great stuff that we can cite, but we won't explain too much. So those who haven't seen the show can then cover them on their own. Pegasus, oh my God, Pegasus! The Pegasus Arc was just.
Yes.
It had a screaming because it was like, wait, this means
yes.
What else? The baby.
Yes.
The baby was kind of expected, but then the baby at the opera house just made us all scream.
I'm a big fan of Doc Cotter. That's about it. Good job, Doc.
Yes. And then the show is really great at catching you off guard when it switches gears. Because from a show that was focused on the humans running away from the Cylons, the show does take turns that are quite unexpected.
Yeah.
And it's still so well done. Because even if it doesn't, struggle to go through those story parts on a day-by-day basis. There are like, okay, this is like months later. We don't feel cheated of what stories could have been explored in those portions.
Karen cites one of the more popular elements of trivia about the show is the fact that Caprica 6, this was her first acting job. And we see her in so many other things. More recently, we were surprised to see her on Lucifer as Lucifer's mom.
And wasn't she also on Human Target, I think?
Yeah, I think that show. But yeah, so it was her first acting job. So that was like interesting. She did really, really well. She was still one of my favorite Cylons, definitely. And then the show crafted its own mythology and its own like prophecy cycle. And then how it all kind of comes through in the end, it was quite fulfilling. I mean, some people disagree about the ending, and that's always the nature of endings. But then I still feel BSG had a better ending than like when people complain about Lost's ending or things like that. BSG's ending made sense for the show, made sense for the direction it was trying to take. It was just a little weird. And then kind of spinning out further in terms of like talking about the other spin-offs. I'm not a big fan of Blood and Chrome. I think they wanted it to be just more fighter action, but it didn't quite play out that way.
For those who don't know, Blood and Chrome was the prequel of the reimagined Battlestar Galactica series.
Yeah, it's like a young Adama.
Yeah, it focuses on the 10th year of the Cylon War, of the first Cylon War, and follows a young William Adama, a young pilot, as he is assigned to one of the battle stars, which is the Galactica. So it supposedly gives you a frame of reference in terms of the narrative, but I don't know, it never really...
It was okay, but it just didn't like super feel like this really helped me with the main show.
Other than that, there was the other spin-off, which was Caprica. Caprica was a TV series that focused on two families, the Greystones and the Adamas, on how they were on the peaceful planet known as Caprica, and a startling breakthrough in artificial intelligence brings unforeseen consequences. So it's in many ways an attempt to do an origin story
for the Cylons.
But at the same time, they tried to frame it as a
annoying teen protagonist show.
Yeah. So it was sort of a teledrama and even less more a sci-fi drama.
Yeah.
Than the original series.
And it had this super like muted color grading, and everybody looked pale and sick. I don't know. That was just me. And it was. We watched it. We tried to watch it, and we see that towards the end they were really trying to like build a connection, but no, it was a struggle. So I wouldn't worry too much about Caprica, the show. Does that cover all the spin-off media? I think it covers all the spin-off media.
That covers all the spin-off media as far as the shows are concerned. Because beyond the shows, of course, there were the books, there were the video games, and there were the tabletop games.
Yeah, let me grab a book. I think I still have it in easy access.
Teeny bopper feelings, according to Karen. Yes, that's what Caprica felt like, which was just frustrating. Mitch shares the punishment of Battlestar Galactica is like playing Among Us. In many ways, I would not be surprised if Among Us drew inspiration from those scenes from shows like Battlestar Galactica, where throwing them out of the airlock was the way to deal with it.
Just like expanded media, which was like additional stories. And then actually I have a few more of these on digital or in a smaller format. So that was fun.
There was an earlier question, I think it was from Karen. Favorite character?
That's hard.
And we won't just choose Doc Tuttle.
That would be like, I'm just cheating because I have no great reason. It's like, because he was just cool and he was just the doctor. And
I can mention the character I hate the most, and it's not Baltar.
But it's spoilery, the one you don't like.
Yeah, well, two of them. For the same reason, they're both annoying. Annoying in how they dealt with things at that late in the season. How can you be so dumb to do that?
So Karen likes Bill Adama. That's fine. Doc Tuttle and Gata. Ooh, Gata. Watch the webisodes.
He sings very well, though.
Yes.
That was one of the things that caught me so off guard, that he has such a beautiful voice.
Mitch's favorite is Boomer. Okay, that's cool. I understand. Boomer is definitely a very popular character. We had so when we found out we were both watching the show, so we had a shared like amused interest with Tamo Penditet, who plays Hilo. In fact, we watched him in another show, and that was just sad. But then it was like never quite Battlestar Galactica. I'm trying to think if I want to isolate, because like there's like so many to like, and I don't want to cite why I like, because then it ties to
well, just don't give specifics.
Yeah, I'm trying to pick now.
So, it's like I hated what's her Deanna? That was her name, right? I hated her because I felt like she devolved in terms of her personality. I felt like in the after surviving all this, I felt like she became so petty in the latter seasons. I liked Starbuck at first, but then I got tired of her. And
because the writing got really weird around Starbuck, because she got burdened with plot.
Yeah. And then I felt the same way with Hilo. He's cute and all, but he became just annoying later on. Boomer was amazing.
I think all of Boomer's story arc was awesome.
All of Boomer's story arcs are awesome. I will always admire Laura Roslin and how they approach that story, that role. And while there were some portions in the last few episodes I could have done without, I kind of didn't need her prelude stories.
Mitch didn't like Tori. I liked her original assistant. What was his name? The guy. He was super loser in the beginning.
Yeah.
And then he just ended not quite a loser. But I never fully recovered. He could only go so far. But he was quaint as a character. And then even Apollo was like mixed annoying. But I get it because he was actually very idealistic, which was they were trying to stress.
But I never found Apollo attractive. I know they were trying to push that in the show, all these shower scenes and all that. But I never found him attractive because he was just so...
He looked very oily.
And well, he was just so annoying in terms of a personality. His lack of confidence really made him ugly.
That's fair. And his indecisiveness many times. Man, I think I'm safer off with Doc. He just works and works and works and putters away and like, whoa, what's this problem now? British Palacio Apollo actor. Yes, if you want to get totally weirded out, shortly after BSG,
their interviews are amazing.
No, there was a Horatio Hornblower miniseries, which is a very British period piece about sailing ships, and he's there, and it's like, what? What?
So to answer the question, my favorite is Admiral Kane.
Yeah,
that was an awesome character.
Of course, you're going to
terrible character as far as the story is concerned, but an awesome character. The way they portrayed her, the way they, I would love a full season of just her story. I mean, her childhood, her rise to becoming an admiral. I would love that.
And then while I didn't necessarily like the character, I will admit that Colonel Ty's arc across the show was kind of brilliant. I mean, like he has a lot of bad choices, and that's it because he doesn't actually start the show in a good place.
Yes.
And he's living with trauma and abuse of his own sort and substance abuse and various things. And how he gets towards the end is quite impressive, I will say. Okay, but that's the character stuff. Very briefly, we'll talk about the game at another point. But what became the core thing about the game is that it's a traitor game. It's a game with a traitor mechanic. We can't play it. Tobie and I can't play it alone because it's a minimum of 3 players again. But what's more unlike most traitor games, so a lot of traitor games is that you're each assigned secret roles, and then they reveal at the end.
This has got really beautiful.
It's beautiful, yeah, stuff from the show art. And then in this case, as far as traitor games go, there is a second round of traitor reveals. So
because you might not have known
that you were a Cylon in the first round, but in the second round, it turns out you're a Cylon. Yeah, and notice we haven't opened them all because we keep trying to teach people the base game, and then we haven't quite gotten around to playing the others. And the fact that we need 3 people to play minimum, and at 3, bit in because it's most likely you're gonna end up with 2 Cylons after the turn. I feel. But
I don't know if you can play 3. I think 4 was 3.
Yeah, minimum 3.
Yeah.
But at 3, it's like super pilit. It's like because there's 2 rounds of Cylon reveals, then most likely it's gonna become Cylons versus humans with 2 Cylons versus 1 human. So it's tricky.
Then beyond the tabletop game, there were computer games. There was the MMO.
It's still around.
Wherein you could actually be from either side, right? You're not just limited to the human side.
I'm not sure. I haven't played it myself. It's still ongoing. A lot of people give a lot of love to that game. In fact, one of my favorite channels, Space Doc on YouTube, actually does a lot of features on ships that were introduced in that canon. So that's kind of awesome. Then there's a role-playing game you mentioned. I haven't seen the role-playing game.
Oh, that was in the video games.
Yeah, but okay, you want to talk about the video games that are on the list?
So the Battlestar Galactica role-playing game was released in 2007. It was a Margaret Wise production.
Margaret Wise. Really?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So
Cortex.
Yeah. It was a Cortex game, and of course that is gone now. But it was similar to the system used for the Supernatural role-playing game.
A lot of TV shows were using Cortex because of the flexibility of that. That had story points also, right? I mean, it had that system. Wasn't there also a Cortex Firefly, or different? You know? Serenity was its own system.
Yes, I think it was Serenity that was Cortex. I think I think Firefly was Cortex. Right?
Okay.
And then beyond that, there were also a bunch of fan-made video games. There was the Beyond the Red Line, which was a conversion of Free Space 2. There was the Espora, which was using, again, Free Space 2 as the main source. And then there were a lot of Battlestar Galactica Second Life things.
Oh, wow. Second Life, man.
But yeah, there was Battlestar Galactica Online. There was Battlestar Galactica Deadlock, which was a 3D strategic game.
That one's the one that's still ongoing, I think. Or is it? Or did it hit end of life? Deadlock.
Deadlock released 2019.
I know Resurrection would start season 2. So it's still active. It's still kicking around. Yeah. Deadlock.
And then there's the Battlestar Galactica mobile game, which was pilots take over the controls of a Viper.
Pretty simple.
Not to mention there were lots of others from way back.
For the original
we're
series.
just focusing on
we're focusing on the reboot. I've been super tempted. So I don't know if you know that I collect Star Trek starships. So they're Eagle Moss, the model people, do a line of die-cast starship models for Star Trek called the Star Trek, the official Star Trek Starships collection, which has spun off that there was the Star Trek Discovery Starship collection, the Star Trek Online Starships collection, and then now they're coming up with Star Trek Universe, which is covering shows like Picard, Lower Decks, and Discovery. So yeah, so the Discovery line is ending, and there's now a Universe line that's all encompassing. Eagle Moss also does a Battlestar Galactica line, which launched in the last few years, and I have not taken the plunge because I know we barely have enough space to deal with my Star Trek ships. And if I got BSG, oh my God, where are we gonna put it? So I don't know. I already lined the hallways with Trek ships. So, but I'm super tempted. I'm super tempted because I love the ships. I love the show. And in fact, like which is on Space Talk, it's often cited as one of the best examples of how to do space battles for TV.
Yes.
Because despite the fact that you have multiple levels of combat, you have fighters to fighters, you have the big capital ships fighting one another, so base star versus Battlestar.
You can still tell what's going on.
You understand what's going on, you understand the stakes, and you can like root for when things are turning good or bad. Whereas a lot of modern shows kind of just throw everything into it. So one show that's chiefly guilty of this, and I'm sad to say, is Star Trek Discovery. Their big fights have way too much going on. You don't know really what the stakes are, and you get lost.
And seem to forget that space is 3 dimensions.
Yes.
So they have everyone just moving in a line for some reason.
Yeah.
For those who might like the show and would like to play the more war aspect of it and not the more
intrigue
mechanic to it. Some fan mods that are really popular include Battlestar Fleet Commander, which was a conversion of Homeworld 2.
Oh my God.
So it allows you to control the fleets as you handle the combat.
And to be fair, Homeworld had like a similar story of we jump, we rule.
Now, the mod actually was popular enough that it's supposedly present as a high-definition release in Homeworld 2.
Oh.
Then there is Battlestar Galactica Colonial Wars, which is a Star Wars Empire at War modification.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
And for this one, they made a story around if the Cylon virus didn't work.
Ooh.
So it's a nice way to explore. I think that was the very first miniseries.
Oh, that virus.
Yeah, I
okay,
think it's
okay,
that way. So it sort of gives you a nice way to see what could have happened if you play it in that way. I don't know if I can handle this type of games anymore, but I know that would have been awesome to play. But yeah.
Mitch cites no sounds in space. Yeah, I think that was like, it was fun that a lot of the space combat was silent, and that the only time you would hear the combat sounds was if you were embedded, like the camera's embedded at the gun mounts. So you're like right beside the gun, and that's why you can sort of hear it. But the moment the camera angle switches further away, it's very muted, which was awesome.
It had that nice feel of atmosphere, similar to what we saw in shows like Firefly, Bear McCreary, I think was the name of the sound person who also did the music for Lost. Amazing use of different cultural nods to give the feel of the human race and to contrast it against the mechanical feel of the Cylons. What else? What else are we missing?
Well, we're just trying to avoid spoilers. I think there's so much more that we could talk about if we actually went into detail about some of the character arcs and why we, and it's so funny because it's a show that's quite old at this point, but I still hold it very sacred, and it's still, if there are people who have not seen it, I would still strongly recommend you get into it and give it a shot. If you if you endured the likes of Game of Thrones, this is so much better.
Yes.
If you things like that, like there are all these big shows now. Even like as much as I'm enjoying the Golden Compass, it's still like a harder watch. This was like so much more relatable. Yeah, his Dark Materials. Yeah. That this still is a lot more approachable. I'm still game for this. I can keep comparing it to a lot of the big like sprawling shows that are out now, and I would still point you here.
I think so what makes Battlestar Galactica really good for me is that given the ensemble cast, it's hard not to find a character or multiple characters that you'll really fall in love with. And you will want to root for them, and you will be so angry when they make the wrong choices. Because the show does allow the characters to have their moments. And even the minor characters who might not have an episode devoted to them, you see how they have bigger roles later on, or you see how they've grown into their positions in terms of how the fleet is. And it's quite remarkable to have a show that you feel like the cast and the characters grew along with you as the show progressed. You have other shows wherein you find yourself just frustrated that, after that episode, he's acting that way again. Why? And it gets frustrating when that happens. I guess that's why I never really connected with some of the more popular shows, because I felt like, by now they shouldn't be like that anymore, but they still are.
Yeah, I mean, like if you look at the characters from the beginning of the series and you compare them at the end of the series, they're practically different people, and often in some cases, and others are just super whittled down to their essence, that that their core principles is all that they're clinging on to, and that's just how the story goes. So that it's tremendously good stuff. And then if you like Battlestar Galactica, it for me my most interesting study is to getting back into Deep Space Nine. While Ron Moore was not the architect of the entire run of Deep Space Nine, the point when Deep Space Nine starts getting really good is when Ron Moore steps in and he's given the reins of the show, and he soft pulls Trek into a serialized format. It still was very episodic, but there was a large meta plot. There was a major event going on in the series, and Moore was the architect of this. And I feel like a lot of what worked there, he brought to BSG, and then booms, amazing stuff. And then super random is that he also did Outlander, the adaptation of the Diana Gabaldon science fiction romance books. And it's mainly science fiction because there's time travel involved, but it's like saying time travel, Doctor Who time travel, where it is a setting and not like the main thing. So it's funny that he's Outlander which has another earwormingly catchy theme song
and sexy guys.
Yes, but not book accurate sexy guys apparently, as my sister has argued before. So what else? I know Karen Marie was saying she definitely wants to play the board game. Yeah, we should. And that's always like, it's so funny, like we have the games, but then it's also hard to like find people.
I know there was an FGTC we brought it and played. I think we played one session with FGTC.
I can't remember. I know we played with Aina. We played in Aina's house.
Oh, so we only brought it and we weren't able.
We may have brought it, but they did not have time to play it at FGTC because then it's like tricky. And I feel like more people were playing it when the show was out, but then since we got our copies after the show, then it was like it's a little harder to pitch. Then we're looking for people who like know the show so that they can appreciate also what's going on. I mean, the game actually, to be fair, I think is pretty solid on its own as a double traitor mechanic game. It's kind of like saying the Expanse board game is pretty good, and like the specific context of the show definitely gives it a nice flavor and meaning. Yeah, but it's on its own. The mechanics are pretty solid on their own. The Battlestar game definitely feels that way, but then the expansions only make sense with the show because it's introducing elements that came out in the subsequent seasons, and without that context, then the expansion is just more stuff.
I guess to wrap it up, there are rumors of a reboot.
I've heard about it. I have not seriously sat down to look into it. I mean, like when it's at the point of rumor and stuff, I don't really care. It's like the Dune movie. We've already had a trailer, but it still hasn't come out, and I don't dedicate part of my brain to think about it, so that I don't get too disappointed because I will hold it up to an impossibly high standard. So that's my stance on BSG, that I super love it as it was, and I like with many franchises, I don't exactly clamor for a reboot or continuation. I can't stop studios from doing it, but I don't specifically look for it. But I feel like it is inevitable. Of course, people said, no, yeah, that's we'll see how that goes, right?
So, are you aware that there was the TV series that was supposed to be under Bryan Singer?
I heard that rumor. That was when Bryan Singer was like still someone they want to work with.
This the early X-Men movie director. And then, of course, there were comics, there were video games.
There's so many comics. I'm overwhelmed by the volume of comics. Like, I haven't been able to collect them. I see them on Comixology periodically, but it's like, oh my god, so many comics. What else?
I'm double checking. There was supposed to be a movie. Yeah. So the latest one is listed as the upcoming Peacock series. NBC Universal's planning a straight-to-series set in the same continuity as the series. So it's supposed to be part of the new Peacock streaming service. But
no information.
At least the claim here is it's not a reboot, but it's like set in the same universe. So that, I guess, remains to be seen.
Karen is asking, there's an omnibus. An omnibus of what? The comics? I think it's still like sold volume per volume. And then I'm always confused. I don't know how it fits into the show. I don't know if I want to. I have some sample issues and I haven't really I wasn't super excited
and the comics
are non-canonical.
The challenge with the comics is you have from Marvel, but you also have from Maximum Press, from Dynamite Comics, from Realm Press.
The one I typically see is Dynamite.
So it's a lot of different publishers. So I think that's why it's never going to have an omnibus.
Unless you're like, the power of Dark Horse, where they were super able to omnibus Alien and Predator and even acquire the rights of some of the like other publisher stories into their set. Same thing with Star Wars, that as Star Wars has jumped from Dark Horse to Marvel and the like, and now it's with Marvel again. Marvel has been able to like handle some of the recompilations. It's kind of crazy. Yeah. So
I guess that
say we all.
it. Yeah. We'll just have to wait and see if there's future news about the supposed Peacock series. Beyond that, do you have any hopes of what new Battlestar Galactica material you'd love to see?
I just...
Because I think we're all unanimous that none of us want to reboot.
Yeah.
But given that the series did have an ending, what do you see as material you would be interested in seeing?
I don't know about seeing. I'm not kidding. Every day I think about if I'm going to subscribe for the Battlestar Galactica starships, and it's a mix of classic Battlestar Galactica and the reboot Battlestar Galactica reimagined. So I don't know.
I would love to see one season of let's say stories from the Galactica, and it's like every episode is a short story set in the Battlestar Galactica universe. None of the main cast, or maybe just cameo moments.
Probably just those other ships in the fleet,
or other people. Like maybe there's one episode and it's about this student who gets inspired by Roslin, and later we see the student volunteering in the occupation, or maybe another episode is about this guy who has a cow and refuses to leave the cow when everyone's leaving the planet, and we just focus on his story for that episode. Stuff like that. It's like all these little snippets of stories that happened in the Battlestar Galactica universe. Maybe even glimpses of some of the big reveals, since most likely people who are watching this have already seen the main series. So like maybe an early visit from the skin jobs, and it's from the perspective of somebody left from one of the other planets before it was blown apart. Or maybe it's a glimpse of the war in, let's say, PyCon, which connects to the miniseries, but the events that are happening in
Karen tacks on that she'd be interested in seeing the individual pilot stories. Yeah, I think we could do like a lot of POV stories for the pilots and like what their life has been, or what was going on like when this bigger event was happening. Yeah. And then like I don't know how to talk about it. There's like the show has a lot of great combat moments, and I mean I already talked about Space Talk, celebrating the quality of the battles, but then really, the show doesn't necessarily have combat all the time. There are episodes where you have maybe one dogfight or one flyby, but there's no like major battle sequence. But then when the show does invest time for a big battle, oh my god, it's super awesome. And then I think there's been very few battles that I did not like feel goosebumps over, that it's, oh my god, this is amazing. And I get that feeling with The Expanse these days. It has those beats of, we have a lot of drama, and then epic space moment, and then drama. And I love that.
I regret having lost the toy that we used to have, because my brother and I used to have the Battlestar Galactica ships that acted like guns.
So they were like Vipers,
because you had the rubber Vipers that were launched with rubber bands. As you shoot them out to fly. And I remember we really loved playing with those, but yeah, we didn't realize we should take care of our toys when we were young.
Well, they were toys, they were well played with, and no regrets there, right? Okay. Karen loves the mix of mysticism and space opera of BSG.
Yes.
And I think that's it. That you have to embrace that theological, philosophical side to the show. Because if you reject that and you want just like a hard sci-fi show, then I understand that when you get to the ending, you don't like the ending. Because the ending has to still tie to that mysticism somehow.
And in many ways, I think that's why we really enjoy The Expanse.
Mm.
Because it still has the same beats,
Yes.
but is different enough that you don't expect it to do the same things. The Expanse has also the strong cultural nods for each social group. There's the somewhat religious nature of the antagonist, which nicely makes you go, see Baltar, that's how it's done.
Charismatic, definitely. Very charismatic.
So it's an interesting direction. And if you love Battlestar Galactica and you miss it and you know there's not enough new material to look for, The Expanse is your best bet to dive into to check out.
Yes.
Other than The Expanse, is there any other space opera-ish or sci-fi-ish dramedy that
nothing made me feel this. I mean, to be fair, it was like I peaked at BSG for the longest time, and then it was only with The Expanse, like, oh my god, this is super amazing. I mean, and as much as we love Fringe, but Fringe is a very different show. It's not it's not a futuristic science fiction show. So we still love it, but not in this vein of the space opera. And yeah, so The Expanse was like the only thing that comes close to comparing.
Okay, I guess that is our episode.
And nobody is selling Expanse ships. Painful. Just the Russian anthem.
At least you have 3D printed ships.
Yes.
But beyond that, I guess that's it. Unless there's any last words you'd like to add.
Karen cites Mormons than naman in The Expanse. That's true. But yeah.
Well, I think a few years from now we will see more material based on other stuff soon, like Scientology and the like. Because it takes a while for something to be safer to touch in popular fiction.
How does it compare to Babylon 5? There are many that argue, this is super aside, that Babylon 5 had like better writing or concepts than Deep Space Nine. I admittedly haven't like fully watched it, but it is definitely from the science fiction era of episodic television. So it doesn't have it's still okay. It still has a larger timeline plot that you follow through, but not my. I haven't really invested the time to try to find it and watch it because it's not easily streamed.
How about Farscape?
If you like Muppets, then you might kind of enjoy Farscape, but admittedly it's a struggle. I've been watching it on Prime Video, and I think you're better off going back to like Stargate, the Stargate TV series. That was a bit more engaging.
So would it be safe to say, if you like the human drama and the politics of BSG, you can watch The Expanse. If you like science, intriguing stories that involve what ifs and future stories, then Discovery would be a great thing to jump on if you miss Battlestar Galactica.
Or The Expanse.
If you like family stories and the like, then Lost in Space might be your jumping point.
Oh, the Netflix Lost in Space.
And then if you want to do it based on, down to earth, then go Snowpiercer.
Oh my god. Well, Karen cites, I know they gave us logins a long time ago, and then like we just never consistently watched. So yeah, I haven't been accessing that platform. That's that server. Okay, so I guess we should get around to it, but we haven't. We super haven't. It would save us download days. Yeah, so that's our talk on Battlestar Galactica. Thursdays are always a struggle of a day. We had mostly core friends in this episode, but I don't mind. We did this mainly for you guys, and I don't need a reason to talk about Battlestar Galactica. So this was a lot of fun. You have any last bits?
No, I think that's it. We had a lot of fun, and we are very thankful you joined us this Thursday, and we hope you'll join us again next time.
For questions or suggestions for future episodes, fill up the Google form at bit.ly Baduy Pride Ideas. Thanks again for suggesting this episode, Karen. Yay! We talked about BSG. You can follow us on Twitter, all Tobie no shade, RGSunico.
You can also check out our blog, baduypride.com, for all the previous episodes and stuff about us. Tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow is the big guest show with the Divine Divas, which is Precious Paul and Nicole, Brigading, and Venus Deluxe. So please try to join us tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Anyway, there's a curfew, so you might as well spend it with us. So that's tomorrow. And then we do have a Sunday episode tentatively planned, and we'll address that accordingly. And hey, it's like this is our second, third week of like, ooh, we have a schedule. So yeah, so we're trying to make sure that we have a regular schedule confirmed every Sunday.
Yeah, I'm hoping that more people start getting into the show, gain momentum, and who knows, maybe we can start doing merch. We have a logo now. I like our logo.
Yes. But otherwise, feel free to continue the conversation in the comments below and let us know what you think about Battlestar Galactica. And why did you hate Baltar? Be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. Once again, I'm Rocky.
And I'm Tobie.
And this is Baduy Pride. Have a good night, everyone.